What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 5 best Path of Exile 2 builds in 2025. So in this guide I will give you a quick overview of each setup, then I will explain what skill gems and upgrades should you focus on. Then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it for both the leveling and endgame. And then finally we will go over the passive skill tree, stats, your skill rotations, and even what charm should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. If you are looking for any of these builds on the website, then click my link in this video description or the pinned comment. This is for sure the best Pathfinder build that pretty much just runs insanely fast and throws out freeze bottles at your enemies that explode through hundreds of targets and one-shots them in split seconds. We are going to be doing about 5 million DPS with a fully maximized gear, and we are also going to be perma-freezing mobs and pinnacle bosses, which will give us a very easy playstyle as we won't have to worry about the enemies too much. Also, for our defense, we are stacking as much energy shield as possible, which will give us anywhere from 8 to 15,000 shields. Overall, this build excels in both clearing and boss fights, and all that we will need to focus on is boosting our survivability and managing flask charges effectively. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the Ranger and our ascendancy is the Pathfinder. Then for the first skill we have the Shattering Concoction with the support gems such as the Scatter Shot, Martial Tempo, Cold Mastery, and the Super Critical. Then second we got the Escape Shot with no support gems. Next we got the Herald of the Ice with the Cold Penetration, Ice Bite, and the Cold Infusion. Next we have the Hypothermia with the Cursed Ground, Heightened Curse, and Magnified Effect. Next up we have the Grim Feast with no gems. Next we got the Cast on Critical with the Eye of Winter, Inspiration, Impetus, and the Energy Retention. Then next we have the Alchemist Boon with Precision. Next we have the Lightning Warp with the Persistence, Overcharge, and the Lightning Mastery. And finally, for the last one, we are using the Ball Lightning with the Arcane Tempo and Acceleration. Most of this setup is structured around using the Scattering Concoction to delete huge amount of enemies in seconds. So we use gems and skills that will support and increase their duration and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Then next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this projectile damage node. Then go like this while also grabbing the Honed Instincts and Vile Wounds. Then from here we keep on going while also taking these two, so Master Fletching and the Cooked. And then from this point you can just unlock all the other nodes in whatever order you prefer. So just simply get these nodes that increase our DPS, and then just keep going like this in a straight line. And then finally, after you got most of the nodes, then you can circle back and grab all the last ones like the Lightning and the Mana Regen. This is one of the easiest 3 builds to follow, as pretty much the whole path is in a straight line. So just follow it, and if your build lacks something at that current time, then you can select it as well. And then now, let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build, this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to get the Brew Concoction, as this will give you the option to pick the Shattering Concoction, that provides us with our main skill and which is the core of our build. Then second, we get the Connected Chemistry. Then third, we select the Enduring Elixirs. And then finally, for the last one, we get the Traveler's Wisdom, which gives us 6 extra passive nodes. This might not sound like much, but at the endgame we can see a huge impact, especially if we spend them on more energy shields. So feel free to use the exact same path as I have right here. And don't forget to check this video description to find a link for this website. And this should make it easier for you to follow the tree. Next up we have our Atlas passives, and this build will benefit a lot from a high pack size, so that our freeze can spread through the use of the Shattering Concoction. So then when we start, we wanna first of all go to the left side, and then get all of these nodes. Then next we now go to the right and get all of these nodes as well. And then from this point and onwards, you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you want. But then on top of this, we have even more passives, which order in which you unlock them doesn't really matter. So this time it's up to you. And this is how it should look like for the ritual. Then next we have Delirium. Then third we have the bosses, and then on top of that we have the pinnacle bosses. Then next we also have our expedition setup, and then finally our breach setup. Now in the next part we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Widow Whale with as much quiver effect as possible, so at least 220% is highly recommended, as this will make you hit the 300% breakpoint with all of the nodes on the passive skill tree. However, if you are going full solo and you don't want a Widow Whale, then use any bow that has plus levels of all projectile skills, or pretty much anything else that would increase our DPS. On top of this, we also have an offhand called the Visceral Quiver, and the most OP thing on this one is increased damage with the bow skills. However, we've heard that developers might nerf it soon, so if that happens they look for stats like plus levels of all projectile skills, increased crit chance and projectile speed. Then for the helmet we have the Expert Wicker Tiara with the Energy Shield, and for more we want max and increased even more Energy Shield, and Fire and Lightning Resistance. Then for chest we have the Expert Cant Raiment with the Energy Shield, and for more we want increased mana regen, max and increased Energy Shield, more to Spirit and Cold and Lightning Resistance. Then for the belt we have the Fine Belt with the faster flask recovery, and for the bonus stats we got increased even more flask recovery, fire and lightning resistance, as well as more to charm slots. Then for gloves we got the Expert Javel Gloves with the Energy Shield, and for more we want even more max and increased Energy Shield, increases to attack speed, cold resistance and increased critical damage bonus. Then for boots we're using the Expert Feather Sandals with the Energy Shield, and for more we want increased movement speed, max Energy Shield and fire resistance. Then for the first ring we got the Breach Ring with the max quality of 50%, and for more we got increased cold damage, intelligence, cold and chaos resistance. While then for the second one we have the Sapphire Ring with the cold resistance, and for more we got cold damage, intelligence and lightning and chaos resistance. And then finally for the amulet we have the Lunar Amulet with the max Energy Shield, and for more we want even more Energy Shield, more to Spirit, plus levels of all projectile skills, and percentage to critical damage bonus. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is a starter setup, which would be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. And as you can see from the gameplay, this is one of the easiest and simplest builds in the game. So while running around in a map, you should not be using anything more than just the Shattering Concoction. Rare monsters will die very fast because of the freeze and the high crit chance. However, the only thing that we need to use is our life flasks to keep our energy shields. And then second for bossing, this time we want to start with a ball lightning. Then second use the lightning warp. Then next activate hypothermia. And then finally after all of this you can simply spam the Shattering Concoction and just keep up our debuffs as they expire. This setup is known as the Toxic Poison build, as we are going to be dealing insane amount of damage with just the poison effects alone. Our playstyle is structured around specializing in dealing damage almost exclusively by spamming the gas and divine arrow, as because of our skill tree and the gear we are going to be deleting trash enemies in split seconds. However, what I really like about this build is the fast speed farming potential, as you can keep moving while dealing a lot of damage over time. And then for the rares and bosses, we will use the Plague Barrier and the Toxic Growth, which will annihilate anyone that stands in our way. If you want to stack as high poison as possible and use one of the highest DPS builds currently in the game, then let's get right into it. So with all of this said, let me show you the build. And for the main class we have chosen to go with the Ranger, and our ascendancy is the Pathfinder. Then for the first skill we have the Gas Arrow with support gems such as the Armor Explosion, Corrosion and Persistence. Then second we got the Toxic Growth with Martial Tempo, Soul Thief and the Concentrated Effect. Then next we got Divine Arrow with Bursting Plague, Comorbidity and the Long Shot. Then next we have the Rain of Arrows with Withering Touch, Maim and the Envenom. Next we are also using the Plague Barrier with Expanse, Magnified Effect and the Chaos Mastery. And then finally for the last one we got the Wind Dancer with Clarity, Cannibalism and Precision. Next up we have our passive skill tree. For most new players this can seem extremely daunting, so let me quickly explain. In very simple terms, every character is granted one passive skill point every time they level up, and are sometimes even granted more for completing certain quests. We have 3 node types, so small nodes, notable nodes and keystones. All of them act as checkpoints that you want to reach and make a path to build around a specific playstyle. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this evasion node. Then go like this and unlock all of these 3 nodes, so Blur, Eagle Eye and the Honed Instincts. Then now keep going down here and then take the right and unlock this Harness the Elements. This will make that never poison effects can pop by themselves and do big damage. So then from here we want to keep on stacking the evasion and poison duration and damage. So then we go back to the previous path and keep going down, while on our way getting most of this circle and both of these two nodes called the escape velocity and the freedom of movement. And now finally from here we want to keep on going forwards and get these two last nodes. And then from here the priority doesn't really matter that much, as you should be already doing huge amount of poison damage. So from here unlock all the other nodes in whatever order you want. Also in the future I'm thinking to maybe invest some points into the acrobatics keystone, which will give me insane amount of evasion, but I still need to test this theory, so I'll let you know if I make an updated video. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our ascension setup this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the contagious contamination, then next get the overwhelming toxicity, then now get the running assault, and then finally the relentless pursuit. If we compare both of the Path of Exile games, then PoE2 is much slower, so getting this movement speed in the endgame will make this build even more powerful than it is right now. And to simplify my decision making and so you could easier understand, then we wanted to prioritize the Blur, Honed Instincts, Heavy Ammunition and the Crippling Toxins, as they will give us the biggest poison upgrades to not only damage but duration as well, so we wanted to get them first. And then for the rest we invested into more stacking evasion, more skill effect duration and just more damage, which will make our poison last forever. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the expert short bow with a crit chance. And for the extra stats that we want to try to get are increased physical damage, increased accuracy and increased attack speed. And also as the bow is a one-handed weapon, so we wanted to get the fire quiver, with the addition that adds 3 to 5 more damage to attacks. And for extra stats we want to get things like the physical damage, increased damage with the bow skills, and increased attack speed. Then for the helmet we have the advanced guarded helm with armor and evasion. For extras we want to get more evasion, more maximum life and reduced attribute requirements. Then for chest we have the expert pathfinder coat with evasion, and for bonus stats get reduced slow on debuffs, evasion rating, max life and percentage to lightning resistance. Then for the belt we have the fine belt with maximum life and lightning resistance. Then for the gloves we got the advanced section braces with evasion, and for bonus stats get accuracy, max life and fire and cold resistance. Then for boots we're using the expert laced boots with evasion, and for extras we want to get increased movement speed, even more evasion and resistances like cold and fire. Then for first ring we got the emerald ring with a lot of accuracy and cold resistance, while on the second one we got the sapphire ring with cold resistance, maximum life and more to all attributes. And then finally for the amulet we got the gold amulet with increased rarity to items found, and for bonuses get max life, more to spirit and more to all attributes. As the game just launched, so this is a starter setup which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. Your weapon will be the most important upgrade, so prioritize any type of flat damage or increased attack speed. And then for defenses, make sure that you're regularly updating the base type of your gear, so prioritize evasion, maximum life and any type of resistance that you can. Also, movement speed on boots is a good option as well. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. And this is actually very straightforward. So for trash and weak enemies, just use the gas and vine arrow, and this will fire toxic arrows on the ground, which will all do poison damage over time, and then even detonate, which will cause you to deal even more damage. Then second, for bosses, rare enemies or just hard packs, this time we want to spam the toxic growth into a single gas cloud, and use plague barrier as needed or just to detonate the toxic growth. This rotation again will shoot toxins on the ground that explode and deal poison damage, but you don't have to wait for that delay by using the plague barrier, and you need to do all of this into a single gas cloud, which you can create by using the gas arrow and increase your damage even more. And then finally, the rain of arrows and the wind dancer are just meant for utility, so use them depending on the fight. This setup is known as the Bonestorm Witch build, and this skill by itself is a slow clearing ability, but with the right gems, passives and synergies, we can make it 100 times better, and this is exactly what we have right here. This build also has two variants, so going full crit chance, what I will personally be doing for myself, or then perhaps go with the detonate a dead variant, Both of these will excel at different things, so which one you choose is up to you. This variant, so the full crit chance setup, excels at huge amount of damage. We won't be focusing on anything else besides the massive crits and stacking as much life as possible, because the more life/defense we have, the more damage we can do in return. Also, at some point in the later game, some lowered gear players might run into a mana problem, but lucky for us, the witch has many tools to address this problem. And with optimized gear, we need nothing more than a single stat roll on our weapon or the gear to completely solve this issue. So if you are finally looking for a super fun Blood Mage build that primarily doesn't use the life leech, but instead goes full life and full crit, then this is the one for you. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the Witch, and our ascendancy is the Blood Mage. Then for the first skill we have the Bonestorm, with support gems such as the Brutality, Arcane Tempo, Inevitable Critical and the Super Critical. Then second we got the Bone Cage with the Spell Cascade, Lockdown and the Splinter. Then next we got the Life Remnant with the Vitality, Clarity and the Cannibalism. Then next we have the Combat Frenzy with the Profusion, Pin and the Potential. And finally for the last one we got the Bone Blast with no support gems. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the spell and minion damage increase node. Then next we want to keep on going like this until we get to our first stop, which is the potent incantation. Then now keep on going to the right side to get this critical exploit. Then now we circle back a little and keep going like this until we get the sudden escalation. Then now from this point we go down like this, then take the right path and keep going until this point, and then keep going all the way up until the tempered mind. Then next we go down a bit and then take right, which will take us all the way to our first keystone, the resonance. Then from this point we want to circle back again and simply get the last two priority nodes called the Power Within and the Last for Power. And then finally from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of the nodes that we got are important, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then in the late game to make it even more powerful. Also, as far as attributes go, so you just simply want to fill your attribute requirements for the gear and skill gems, and then after that, spend the rest of your leftover attributes into more strength. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our Ascendancy build, this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Sangumancy, but please don't get it too early. This node is required for every Blood Mage, and this ability does ton of self damage, and it can be quite hard to mitigate this in the early game. So I recommend for you to wait until you complete your second trial, and then take your first and second Ascendancy at the same time. So then after the second trial you want to get the Grasping Wounds. This one will make you significantly tankier and synergize very well with the Sangumancy. So as I said before, get both these Ascendancies at the same time. Then next, take the Gore Spike. This will scale off your maximum life and is a big damage boost. And then finally for the fourth option, you want to take the Crimson Power, as this will give you a massive energy shield body armor. And this will also scale really well with our previous Gore Spike. Next up we have our Atlas passives. And the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or the rituals. Our Bonestorm Blood Mage build won't be doing crazy amount of damage against single targets, so we mainly want to do very small farming in boss maps or the essences. So then when we start, we want to first of all get this bottom right side like this, then from here go like this until we get all the way to the left side. And then when all of these passives are done, then now we go again to the middle. And now take the middle path and then go a bit to the left again and get all of these nodes. Then next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Attuned Wand with the mana drain, and for the extra bonuses we want increased spell damage, plus 3 levels to all physical spell skills, then also increased critical hit chance, and more percentage to critical damage bonus. Next we also have the offhand called the Emblem Crest Shield, with the armor and energy shield. This specific shield is the best job that I got, but it's not required. However, for bonuses we want max life, cold and fire resistance. Remember that our main goal is to stack as much life and resistances as possible, so that's why you will see few stats repeating all over again. Then for the helmet we have the Expert Vigor Tiara with the energy shield, and for more we want max life, cold and fire resistance. Then for the chest we have the Guild Vestments with the armor and energy shield. And for bonus stats we need max life, evasion rating and the fire resistance. Then for the belt we have the rawhide belt with the increased recovery to the flask, and for the extras we want max life, lightning and chaos resistance. Then for the gloves we got the torn gloves with the energy shield, and for more we want max life, increased armor and evasion. Then for boots we're using the bushwhack with the evasion. For this build we will need to get these boots or use the pin gem on our combat frenzy. So which option you prefer, it's up to you. But if you have the pin, then the boots are not required, but still very powerful. So get it or not, but at least go with as high movement speed as possible. Then also get evasion rating and more to dexterity. Then for the first ring, get the ruby ring with fire resistance, and for more we want max life, lightning and chaos resistance. While on the second one we got the sapphire ring with cold resistance, and for more get max life, fire or lightning resistance. And finally for the amulet, get the solar amulet with more to spirit and max life. No matter which gear you choose, at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. Our main rotation will be the same, no matter if you choose to go with the full crit or the detonator variant. So for weak enemies we simply want to choose a target, and then just spam the Bonestorm with the Bone Cage. And then for bosses or elites we still do the same thing, just this time also integrate the Bone Blast with the Bonestorm and the Bone Cage, and it's that easy. Most of our buffs will work in the background, which will give us the real damage, so then all you have to do is get used to the mechanics, which are mainly to use the channeling trick, then to be kiting enemies 24/7 and pick up the life remnants, and then from here just spam the Bonestorm and the Bone Cage and have fun. So this is an endgame build that utilizes the power of the attribute stacking to increase its performance. Our main goal is to stack as much strength, dexterity and intelligence as possible, to then scale it with our unique items such as the Pillar of the God and the Hand of Wisdom and the Action. One of the best things about our setup is that all it needs to function at the start is the Pillar of the Caged God, which is pretty affordable on a budget, but then later on we can scale it incredibly high with each unique item and massive power upgrades and much more. Our main playstyle will revolve around using the Tempest flurry in the combination with the charged staff that can hit multiple times and create lightning shockwaves. If you want to zoom through the maps insanely fast while destroying anything and everyone that crosses your path, then this is the one for you. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the Mercenary, and our ascendancy is the Gambling Legionnaire. Then for the first skill we have the Tempest Flurry with the support gems such as the Martial Tempo, Inspiration, Glacianation and the Ice Bite. Then second we get the Charged Staff with the Primal Armament, Lightning Infusion, Overcharge and the Concentrated Effect. Then next we got the Tempest Belt with the Concentrated Effect, Overabundance, Elemental Focus and the Close Combat. Next we have the Wind Dancer with the Blind, Maim and the Pin. Next up we have the Herald of the Ice with Magnified Effect, Lightning Infusion, Primal Armament and the Elemental Focus. Next we got the Combat Frenzy with the Profusion. And finally for the last one we are using the Glacial Cascade with no support gems. Most of the setup is structured around using the Tempest Fury and the Charged Staff to delete huge amount of enemies in seconds. So we use gems and skills that will support and increase their duration and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Also, at this point I would usually show you a leveling build, but this time our particular setup is specifically meant for only endgame, because it will only start working when we get the quarterstaff called the Pillar of the Caged God. So until that point I would recommend to use my cheap gas grenade build, which link you can find in the description and on this website. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this armor and evasion node. Then go like this while also grabbing the Battle Hardened and the Relentless. Then from here keep on moving while also on our way getting these two, and also the beef. Then afterwards we go like this, and then here at the end we want to go up top and get this blood magic. We want to use this specific node because scaling mana and handling mana cost is expensive, while maintaining very high tankiness, so this is a great keystone to solve any potential mana problem. Then after this, we now want to circle back and this time go to the bottom and get this brute strength. And then as you can see from here, the whole path pretty much just goes in a straight line. So just follow it while also grabbing everything that you can see right here. The only thing that you need to keep in mind is that you don't need to get these two, so the lightning rod and the flash storm, if you still haven't equipped the hands of the wisdom and action. And then from here, the most important nodes and the ones we want to get is the storm and the river, as they increase our evasion rating while also letting the freeze to build up faster for more consistent explosions with the Herald of the Ice. And on top of this, it also makes keeping up our charge staff much easier, by giving it an extra duration when consuming a single power charge, since it counts as using an extra charge. And then finally, the last most important part is the resonance, as it is one of the core nodes of our build. It will convert the frenzy charges gained from the combat frenzy into the power charges, which will allow us to cast our insane charge staff. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build, this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to get the adaptive capability, then second get the enhanced effectiveness. Because of how many attributes we will stack, this node will grant us a massive amount of life early on. With about 500 strength, this node will result in more than 1000 extra life. Then for the third one we want to get the integrated efficiency. And then finally for the last one we get the gem studded, which is another powerful node. If we don't get this one, then our build will run out of the effective support gems. So we want to get it to not only increase our DPS, but also to create the bigger explosions by using the Herald of the Ice. So feel free to use the exact same path as we have right here. And don't forget to check this video's description to find the link for this website. And this should make it easier for you to follow the path. Next up we have our Atlas passives. So when we start we want to first of all go to the right side and get all of these nodes, until we get to this keystone called the Deadly Evolution. Then from here we want to circle back to the middle, and this time go up top, until we get to the second keystone called the Corrupted Infusion. And then from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you want. But then on top of this, we have even more passives. Which order in which you unlock them doesn't really matter, so this time it's up to you. And this is how it should look like for the ritual. Then next we have Delirium, then third we have the bosses, and then on top of that we have the pinnacle bosses. Then next we also have our expedition setup, and then finally our breach setup. Then next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Pillar of the Cage God. This is relatively cheap and common item, however in the early game we want to use the Glacial Rune or the Storm Rune to increase its flat damage output even more. On top of this, if you get lucky enough, then you can also find this quarterstaff with 3 sockets. Then for the helmet we have the 3 dragons. And after you get the Hands of the Wisdom in action, then this is the third priority that you should get, as it is mandatory to ensure that you are freezing enemies for a massive Herald of the Ice explosion. Then for the chest we have the Warrior Invictus. This is another powerful item, but this time not mandatory whatsoever, so use this one or anything similar. And for stats we want to focus on increased evasion, more to strength, dexterity and intelligence, and more resistances like fire, cold, lightning and chaos. Then for the belt we have the double belt with increased charm charges. And for bonus stats we want max life, more to strength and chaos and fire resistance. Then for gloves we got the Hand of the Wisdom in action. This should be the second item that you prioritize after our weapon, as it is another core part of our build, and will enable us to stack our attributes and increase DPS by a massive amount. Then for the boots we're using the advanced hunting shoes with evasion and energy shield. And for more we want increased movement speed, max life, more to dexterity and fire and cold resistance. Then for first and second ring we got the same one called the Prismatic Ring, with more to all elemental resistances. And for more we want adds fire or cold damage to attacks, and more strength, dexterity and intelligence. And then finally for the amulet we have Amber Amulet with strength. And for more we want more to all attributes, more to strength and intelligence. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is the best setup in the endgame, and if you only can afford few things, then I would recommend to prioritize the weapon, then the gloves, and finally the headpiece. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So for maps and AoV farming, we simply want to spam our Tempest flurry while making sure to maintain the charge staff for as long as possible. However, then for single targets and boss fights, we want to start by attacking with the Tempest flurry to generate combo stacks. So then we use our Tempest belt and then continue attacking with the Tempest flurry. This combo will freeze the bell and generate a power charge. So then afterwards we use our power charge by casting the charge staff. So then once the charge staff is active, we want to continue attacking the target with the Tempest Fury and replace the Tempest Bell whenever it goes down. This setup's main playstyle is built around putting up a frost wall and then blasting the enemies with infinite amount of fireballs. Cold exposure in the combination with the fire skills is very incredibly OP in the endgame, so this build works amazing on big groups of enemies where we simply use 2 skill combo and cover our entire screen with the projectiles that explode and do massive amounts of damage. On top of this, we are going to be using nodes like the Scoring Winds, Constant Gale and many more to increase our cast speed and mana, so we could basically spam our frost walls and speed farm through every single content in the game. And then on top of this, for our defense we are going to be focusing on the energy shield and its recharge rate, so we could easily get over 15,000 shields and much more. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the sorceress and our ascendancy is the Storm Weaver. Then for the first skill we have the Fireball with the support gems called the Unleash, Scatter Shot, Wild Shards, Rising Tempest and the Control Destruction. Then second we get the Flame Wall with the Fortress, Persistence, Arcane Tempo and the Fire Mastery. Then next we get the Frost Wall with the Icicle, Spell Cascade and Glaciation. Then next we have the Frost Bomb with the Strip Away and Magnified effect. Next up we have the Cast on Freeze with the Comet and Impetus. Next we go the Grim Feast with the Clarity. And finally for the last one we're using the Hypothermia with the Persistence and Heightened Curse. Most of the setup is structured around using the Frost Wall and the Fireballs to delete enemies in seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their size and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this energy shield node, and then take all of these 3, so pure energy, rapid recharge and the dampening shield. Next up let's go to the right and get this whole circle. Then now we want to go to the left side and get both of these as well, so the essence infusion and the exploit the elements. Then from here let's keep continuing our way up top, and on our way we want to get the overexposure and the climate change. And then from here we go to the right and first get the physics fragmentation, and then also the thin ice. And then from here we want to go back all the way from where we began, and just unlock these defensive nodes in whatever order you prefer. Overall, there are 2 ways to approach spending points in the passive tree, so either way maximizing every single level and then continuously refunding your points, or perhaps just be a little bit less efficient, but focus on already the mid to end game build, which is exactly what we did. But in what way you do it is of course up to you, as long as you use the same exact path at your final version. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Scoring Winds, as it doubles the effectiveness of our exposure applied by the Frost Bomb, which then scales even further with the passive tree and the Strip Away support gem. Then second we get the Constant Gale for the 10% more cast speed and 20% more mana regen rate. This build will often struggle with the mana, so any additional mana regeneration is always useful. Then next we get the Strike Twice, which now lets you apply 2 shock stacks to your enemies, and in combination with our 4th option, the Shaper of the Storms, your cold damage can now also apply shock. This unlocks a new way of scaling your damage by shocking and freezing the enemies at the same time, which makes this build very powerful in the late game. Next up we have our Atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. So when we start we wanna first of all go to the right side, and then get all of these nodes, and then keep going down until you get this keystone called the Deadly Evolution. Then from here we circle back a little, and this time keep going up until we get a second keystone called the Unstable Energies. And then from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you want. But then on top of this, we have even more passives, which in order you want to unlock them doesn't really matter, so again it's up to you. And this is how it should look like for the ritual. Then next we have Delirium. Then third we have the bosses. And then on top we have the pinnacle bosses. Then next we also have our expedition setup, and then finally our bridge setup. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Chimming Staff with the Schedule of Power, and for more we want increased cold damage, Then also increase spell damage and plus levels of all spell skills. Then for the helmet we have the Expert Vicar Tiara with the energy shield. And for bonus stats we need max energy shield, max mana, lightning resistance and fire resistance. Then for the chest we have the Expert Altar Robe with the energy shield. And for more we got the fastest start of the energy shield recharge. Then also the max energy shield, more to spirit and fire and chaos resistance. Then for the belt we have the linen belt with the increased mana flask recovery. And for more we want to go with the max mana and life, and cold and fire resistance. Then for gloves we got the blue flame bracers with the armor and energy shield. And with them we also got the intelligence, fire and cold resistance. And 100% of our damage is now converted to cold. As I said previously, this is not required as our build only uses the best of both worlds, so both the cold and fire damage, and it doesn't really matter if we 100% go into one or another, as long as we use the best skills that are associated with the element. So with that said, if you can't afford it or don't want to get the best in slot item, then you can go with any other similar gloves with a similar stats. Then for boots we are using the Expert Wrap sandals with the energy shield, and for bonus stats we get increased movement speed, max life, lightning and fire resistance. Then for our first ring we got the ruby ring with the fire resistance, and for more we got max life, cold and lightning resistance. While then on the second one we have the sapphire ring with the cold resistance, and for more we got max life, max mana and lightning resistance. And then finally for the amulet we got the stellar amulet with more to all attributes, and for more we need more to spirit, lightning and chaos resistance. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is a starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So our main rotation and the highest DPS combo is to first of all place down our Frost Bomb in the flame wall under the enemies. Then now use Hypothermia. Then afterwards use the Frost Wall on top of the targets. Then now shoot the fireballs towards the location where you place the Frost Wall, and then from here just maintain the Flame Wall and the exposure from the Frost Bomb. In a quick summary, what we basically want to do is place the Frost with the Flame Wall to burn the enemy and buff our attacks, so then we use the Hypothermia for more buffs, and then from here we just stun and immobilize the enemies with the Frost Wall, while at the same time spamming the fireballs until the enemy is dead. But to be honest, like you can see from the gameplay, on pretty weak enemies all you need to do is just spam the fireball in the combination of any other spell, and because of our setup they will not stand a single chance against us. So let me know what you think about this build in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, then you definitely don't want to miss my top 3 best builds video, where I showed even more powerful builds, so click the screen now and I'll see you in the next one.